Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Common Sense Guys channel. Today we're going to be talking about a lovely bit of journalism. Yes, actual journalism from the British media corporations, and somehow even Channel 4 News actually doing due diligence and asking the hard questions, as in, why did you think the way that you thought, and why did you say what you said? As hard-hitting journalism that actually saw Jeremy Corbyn erupt and, in my opinion, completely and utterly self-own himself. He eviscerated himself. Any form of credibility of being the kind old grandfather of politics has, in my opinion, been completely eradicated and eviscerated. So, Channel 4 News was able to have an interview with Jeremy Corbyn, and they asked him some actual questions on his policy and the reasons why he believes what he believes. And for me, this is an absolute train wreck of an interview. He completely and utterly stumbles over himself, contradicts himself on a regular basis, and even backtracks on what he actually says, to be proven a hypocrite from what he actually just said literally seconds ago. Now, don't take my word for it. Let's actually take the time to go into this video and actually watch it and decide for ourselves. Let's get into it, shall we?
So you're against Harriet Harman's position on the welfare cuts announced in the budget. You've got this petition. So are you now leading a rebellion? Should Labour MPs currently follow their interim leader, Harriet Harman, or should they follow you?
So straight away we have the leader of the Labour Party being challenged on two fronts. One by the actual question, but more importantly by Harriet Harman, that is now being technically classified as leader of the Labour Party because of coming out with different policies. Maybe that's a jest and a jive, but it does actually ring true to the fact of, can Jeremy Corbyn actually lead anything without people going against him? And it honestly does seem that that's not the case. But more importantly to the question that was asked, he was asking if it was a case of, are you in charge and leading a rebellion, or is Harriet Harman in charge? Now, very, very, should we say, confrontational question, but a very pungent one, to the point of, who is actually in charge? And are you going to do anything to actually stop somebody else trying to usurp you? Now, let's see how Jeremy Corbyn actually handles this.
I was very surprised and very disappointed that Harriet made the statement that she did yesterday. There was no consultation with anyone in the party about it. And she announced, well, you heard it, that we were, as a party, supposed to be accepting what the government was trying to do. And there are a number of issues we need to unravel here, really three. One is the second child onwards policy, where child tax credit is not available, or children's allowances are not available for the larger families. That's very unfair on children of large families. Secondly, the question of the welfare cap, reducing to 23,000 in London, 20,000 outside London, has a devastating effect on poor families living in private rented sector. And the third is, of course, the family tax credit cut altogether.
Yeah, but should Labour MPs follow you or Harriet Harman?
There's a reason why I let that play until the question was re-asked. Did you actually notice that Jeremy Corbyn was asked a specific question, who is actually in charge of Labour? Is it you or is it Harriet Harman? Now, it's a direct question that any leader in his right mind that is able to say that they are leader would categorically state, look, we've had a disagreement, Harriet shouldn't have come out with this, but I am definitely the leader. Jeremy Corbyn doesn't do that. He obfuscates, he diverts, he doesn't actually answer the question. He starts talking about the different policies, where the direct question was asked, who the hell is in charge of Labour? And Jeremy Corbyn did not answer. Now that they have asked the same question again, let's see if Jeremy Corbyn can actually answer the question. Who is in charge of Labour? Him or Harriet Harman?
Well, there's a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party this evening, and I hope they will decide, if there's to be a decision made there, that we should be opposing what the government is doing.
So you're leading a rebellion?
So, short answer, no. No, he's not in charge of Labour, because he's taking it back to a committee that's going to decide whether or not he's in charge or Harriet's in charge. All kidding and joking aside, I'm pretty sure that he's purposely, not unintentionally, but purposely, misunderstanding or misrepresenting the question to try and get it to be about policy rather than the simple fact of explained plainly twice who is in charge of Labour. And for him to, let's say, go round in circles to try and answer a question that wasn't even asked of him about policy, but who was actually in charge, to try and make the question about policy when that's not what the question was. But, you know, let's carry on and see how he can salvage this at this point, shall we?
Right now,
I'm suggesting that we should be against it. That's why I put a petition up, and indeed an awful lot of people in the Labour Party say exactly the same thing.
So, for a third time being asked, for a third time trying to talk about the actual policy that nobody was asking about, but obfuscating, diverting, pushing aside a simple, direct challenge and question. Who is in charge of Labour? Jeremy Corbyn? We don't know.
so you've got no problem with somebody coming from abroad as a migrant with 5 kids, say, and claiming 5 lots of child tax credits, 5 lots of child benefits, housing benefit, no limit on their benefits at all?
People don't just walk into the country and claim benefits. First of all, they've got to be allowed.
No, but let's assume they've got here. You've got no problem with that scenario.
So, again, we have Jeremy Corbyn very honestly, should we say, very honestly, maybe the opposite of, trying to reshape, reform the question into something that he can, I suppose, deal with, that he's already had written down before, that he can manage. But actually being asked the question, what would happen if this was to happen? Where with your combined policy of freedom of movement of people and your idea, Jeremy Corbyn, of being able to up the limit of families that do get family tax credits, that do get family benefits, and so on and so forth with the housing and so on and so forth with it, how is that going to affect everything else? What is the limit that you would be putting onto it? What is the stop? What is the cap? Jeremy Corbyn's response is, well, you know, they don't actually just walk into the country. Like, that's the actual point of the question, Jeremy Corbyn. It's about how you are going to affect the country by enacting your policies.
People living here in Britain deserve to be able to live decently. Every child deserves to be able to be fed properly, go to school and live decently.
So just answer that scenario.
That is what the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is about. That is what the Children's Act is about.
So that's a long way of saying you've got no problem with that scenario. 5 kids from wherever, Eastern Europe, come to Britain.
People and children.
No limits on their benefits.
People and children come first. The amount of money involved is not that great when compared to the total budget as a whole.
Again, it seems like it is a common theme of Jeremy Corbyn's interview tactics, which is, I don't like the way that you framed this question, so I'm going to reframe the question in a way that I can answer it and the way that I feel that is beneficial to me, not how it actually looks. So Jeremy Corbyn was asked the question of if people from different countries come into our country and are able to have a non-limit cap of benefits, that they would be able to get benefits all the way up to 5, 6, 7 kids, however many kids that they've got, and how much that would actually cost the UK, how much that would actually affect policy, services, so on and so forth. Jeremy Corbyn's response is, well, you know, money doesn't really matter if you take into account everything that we've actually got. So we've got to make sure that we look after the rest of the world, and anybody that comes into the country, we've got to look after them. Not the actual citizens have to first attempt to look after themselves. But no, straight away the government has to look after everyone.
Why do you think people who voted Conservative in 2015 will suddenly vote for a Socialist in 2020?
Because everyone wants to live in a decent society. Everyone is one accident away from a dependence on the welfare state and dependence on the NHS.
I honestly don't know whether to laugh or cry. Why and how would you be able to convince a Conservative to vote for Labour, a Socialist? Well, I haven't got any decent arguments. I haven't got any decent talking points that would be able to change any Conservative's mind on this. But, you know, if they've ever used the NHS, then they should vote for my complete and utter socialist policies of what most Conservatives would deem as damaging to the UK's economy and country as a whole. But, you know, the NHS, support it. That would be able to convert people into supporting Labour. What kind of world do you have to live in for that to be a changing factor of somebody actually changing their vote from Tory that was literally 2 years ago to you, Labour, now?
Have you converted any Conservatives since the election? Have you got any supporters who voted Conservative at the last election?
I've met quite a lot of people at the various hustings and public events we've been at who voted UKIP, who are now beginning to regret it because they
haven't
realise...
converted any Tories so far?
I haven't been going around meeting Tories. It's been a Labour...
Yeah, but you need to win Tories round, don't you, at the next election?
The Labour Party needs to win a lot of people round, particularly young people who didn't vote, particularly young people who didn't register.
So, a very, very important question there by Channel 4 News anchor, and that is the fact of how are you going to get people to vote for you? Because out of the last two elections, yeah, you were close, but for you to actually win, you're going to have to convert Tories that are already voting Tory. Jeremy Corbyn's response is, well, what we're going to do is, because we can't actually convince people that are Tories with the argument of the NHS and you should support us because the NHS, we're going to go to children, kids, and try and preach to them and get them to vote for us by offering them things like free internet, stuff like that. Yeah, that's how their policy actually seems to be. Am I wrong in that? What do you guys think? Is that really what their policy is? I don't want to try and convince any Tories to vote for me. I'm going to try and get kids to vote for me instead. Is that a fair assumption there?
If you end the free movement of people across Europe, which is mainly what UKIP and those that are concerned about this talk about, then what would happen the other way around? If we start saying to people from other parts of Europe living in Britain that they've got to go back home, what happens to those 2 million people living in France, Spain, Italy and other European countries?
Wait. You didn't just say what I think you did you? Where you were trying to say that people that want to end freedom of movement also want to somehow kick out all immigrants from the UK, and how in retaliation you think that the European Union would kick out the 2 million Brits that are abroad, all because of freedom of movement not being continued. Is that really something that you actually think is, one, a policy of people that are talking about immigration, and two, and probably more important in general, that would actually happen if you were to end freedom of movement? To get other people's actual positions fundamentally wrong, and then to get the foundation of what you're talking about, the freedom of movement, completely and utterly wrong on how it's implemented, and you are supposed to be, one, the opposition leader that's vying to be our Prime Minister, and you get both of those wrong, how can you lead when you get things like this wrong?
What about those thousands of people in Calais desperate to get into Britain? Should we let them in?
We should let people into this country who are desperate to get somewhere safe to live. We should be properly supporting refugees.
This is something that I've always found really fascinating about people. We need to support refugees and make sure that they're safe, which is something that I do believe everybody can agree on. I do believe that everybody can agree on the fact that we think that all refugees should be safe. Are they not safe in France? Are they not secure in France? I I just don't get it. Are you saying that France isn't a safe country and they need to come to our country to be safe?
The
But
real
60%,
the real,
would
can I
60% be
finish?
too high?
Can I finish? The real issue is corporate tax fraud across the world.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But
Well, right, so why don't we concentrate on that then?
Is 60% too high?
For somebody earning a very large salary, no, because if somebody's earning several £1 million at the moment, there is nothing beyond the cap on the going up to 45%. There's nothing
Well,
beyond
is
that.
70% too high then?
I don't think we need to go that high. But
But is it too high?
in a moral sense, no. But I don't.
So there
think
is no limit, is there?
I
in
didn't
your
say
terms?
that. You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that at all.
Well, then what is the limit? That's
I'm not
where
going to
we
put a
started.
limit on it. I don't see why anybody should put a limit on it.
Oh, Jeremy Corbyn. You were literally just asked a question of, do you think that there should be a limit on it? And you saying that not morally and everything else of that. And then the commentator then comes back and says, well, you don't think that there should be a limit on it. And then you're going, well, no, you're putting words in my mouth. To literally then say, no, there should not be a limit. We don't need to have a limit. Completely and utterly contradicting yourself on the issue of taxing. That you would actually tax up to 100% of actual earnings. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing that you would actually do that. Obviously after a certain cut-off point. But you're literally... I love that. No, we don't want to tax the rich as high as possible for literally no reasons whatsoever. I don't think it needs to go up past 60% or 70%. But morally, there's no reasons why we shouldn't take your goddamn money.
You know, should we accept the existence of super rich people? Or would there be no super rich people
The
in
ideal-
Britain if you were Prime Minister?
Are super rich people actually happy with being super rich?
What? What the fuck?
I'll try and be as brief as possible on this because I could actually do a whole video just on this point in itself. But the Channel 4 News anchor asks Jeremy Corbyn, should the super rich exist? And Jeremy Corbyn's honest response to that question is to ask a question of saying, are they really happy though? Are the super rich really happy being super rich? Now, let's take it that that's his honest opinion, right? And very, very quickly, if that's his honest opinion, that he doesn't think that the super rich are happy being super rich, then that means that he thinks that the people that are super rich are not doing it for the pursuit of happiness. They're not doing it for the betterment of themselves or anybody else. They're doing it because they're evil and because they're hoarding. Nothing to do with the fact of their own personal gain, whether you think that's a good reason or a bad reason. They are doing it because they're not even happy. They're doing it because they're evil. That's the actual thinking of Jeremy Corbyn. That the super rich are not even happy being super rich. They're just doing it because and out of spite.
Let's briefly talk about foreign affairs. Why did you call Hamas and Hezbollah your friends?
What I did was spoke at a meeting in which I said I wanted all people involved in the Middle East issue to come together and be able to have a discussion, to be able to
Well, you
discuss.
said our friends
Can you allow me to finish? Do you mind?
Yeah, but I asked you a question and you're
No.
ignoring it.
No, I'm not ignoring the question. If you'd give me a minute, I'll answer it.
Wow, that was a bit angry, wasn't it? That was a bit angry. Almost like this situation has been plaguing him for some period of time. You know, one of his crooks of being ridiculed or being pointed out as hypocritical or, you know, terrorist sympathizer. Excuse me. Sorry, slipped out. Jeremy Corbyn's response here is absolutely gold. To the point of the Channel 4 News anchor operates and asks a direct question to him. What did you mean by calling Hezbollah and Hamas your friends? And Jeremy Corbyn was going to go into a, let's say, a segment of trying to say, you don't understand the Middle East. But I do, because I've been paid by Iran to say that I know what's happening in the Middle East. And quite rightly, the news anchor says, that's not what I'm asking you, that's not a question. to the point of Jeremy Corbyn realising that he's not on, for a change, friendly territory, and is actually going to be pushed on this view of what did you mean by Hezbollah and Hamas being your friends, is now going to have to actually deal with this. And I think that that absolutely infuriates him, that he's being challenged on his idea of calling them friends.
The point is this.
Friends?
Listen for a minute, if you don't mind.
I really do feel sorry for the news anchor at that point, where he's literally restating the same question. The point of the question was to ask, do you classify them as friends? Do you think of them as friends? And again, either Jeremy Corbyn wanting to reframe the question so he can actually answer it in a way that doesn't actually answer the question, or just a lack of understanding in general. But if you're looking for an actual meltdown, get ready for a humdinger, because it gets better. And this is supposed to be the guy that's going to be a cool, calm head in politics and as leader of the UK and Prime Minister. Let's have a look at that, shall we?
I spoke at a meeting about the Middle East crisis in Parliament. And there were people there from Hezbollah. And I said, I welcomed our friends from Hezbollah to have a discussion and a debate. And I said I wanted Hamas to be part of that debate. I have met Hamas in Lebanon, and I've met Hezbollah in this country in Lebanon. I've also met...
are they your friends or not?
Can I finish?
Are they your friends or not?
Can I finish? I've also met...
Well, you can't if it's a long answer.
Look, the issue is this.
Don't you wave your finger at me, dear boy. How dare you ask me questions on how I actually meant things and situations, and how dare you hold me to account and not let me actually answer the question in what way I want to. But in all seriousness, Jeremy Corbyn is basically getting annoyed because the news anchor is trying to pull him on that question and point him to that question, which is, do you classify them as friends? Not spin me a towel, spin me a yarn, so it actually makes it sound like it's a good thing for you to call them friends. No, do you think them as friends? He's actually he's actually bowling the question for you underarm so you can bat it for 6 or for a home run. But you're too set in your ways to realise what he's actually done for you, and now you're attacking him for bowling it up for you to knock it out of the park. He's literally setting it up for you to go, no, I don't classify them as friends, but they are worth being talked to. But you're so set in your ways that you think that they're trying to knock you out, not the other way round of helping you knock it out.
You are not prepared to discuss the whole issue of the Middle East. You're not prepared to discuss the wider question. The wider question is...
Why don't you like the friends that I want? Why can't I have my friends? And the reasons why I'm so annoyed is because they're my friends. And you're telling me I can't be friends with them. Again, in all seriousness, the anger and vitriol that comes out from the point of, you don't understand the Middle East, so how could you understand why I was calling them friends? It's like, no, Jeremy Corbyn, do you classify them as friends or do you not? It is a simple answer, yes or no. You can then expand on the reasons why you say no, but, or yes, and I love them. It's just amazing that you won't answer a single question honestly and directly.
Hamas, Hezbollah are part of a peace process. Even the former head of Mossad says that there has to be talks involving Hamas. I've also had discussions with people...
Do you know the reason why that Hamas, not Hezbollah, but why Hamas has been invited to peace talks before? Because they somehow are the leaders and the government in control of Palestine, which is the reasons why they have been invited to certain peace talks. Not the terrorist group Hamas, though to be certain there isn't too much of an actual difference. It's the two sides of the same coin, but you know, there is a distinction with a difference.
And I'm very happy for you to make all of that clear. But I'm saying you use these words, friends. Now, are you saying they're not your friends? Or are you saying they are your friends?
I'm saying that people I talk to, I use it in a collective way, saying our friends we're prepared to talk to. Does it mean I agree with Hamas and what it does? No. Does it mean I agree with Hezbollah and what they do? No. What it means is that I think to bring about a peace process, you have to talk to people with whom you may profoundly disagree. There is not going to be any peace process unless there is talks involving Israel, Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think everybody knows that.
Point of reference, was that actually so hard, Jeremy Corbyn, to say from the beginning that no, you don't agree with their positions, you don't agree with what's going on, that you use it as a colloquial term, as a point of integration to be able to put everybody on a level playing field? Was that so hard to say, rather than going round the houses of saying, you don't understand the Middle East, to try and make a point? Why did you have to go all the way around the houses just to say, no, I don't support these people's and their ideas, but we need to have a peace talk with them, so they have to be invited?
But as you know, the controversy is around you calling them friends, and you've explained, I think, that when you said that, you didn't mean that they're friends. I
implore people to listen to that little extract just between these two cut-off points again and again. The news anchor is setting up Jeremy Corbyn to be able to say, look, people have got you mixed up in the way that you've said. If you've explained it before that you were inviting them and calling them friends because you wanted it on a level playing field. Paraphrasing, obviously. But Jeremy Corbyn is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Even when the news anchor is helping Jeremy Corbyn, this eruption incurs.
I used it in a collective way at a discussion, and you're trying to trivialise the whole issue of the Middle East. You're trying to trivialise the whole discussion about how you bring about a long-term peace process.
I'm very happy to have long conversations with you.
Well, why don't we have them then?
And you've been on this programme talking about the Middle East many times.
Well, not very recently, actually. You haven't had me on for a long time.
But this quote about friends has surfaced, and that's what I was asking you about, and you've had your opportunity to...
Well, thanks for the tabloid journalism.
To answer.
So, let me get this straight. The gentleman, the news anchor, has to ask you the question because it's an election, it's a talking point that's being talked about by the electorate and wants things to be cleared up. He even helped you 2 to 3 times to say, look, I am aware that you have said before that you were meaning this in this way. Is that a fair assessment? Your screaming fit was to say, right, you are being tabloid news by doing this. You are trying to smear me. You don't understand the Middle East. You. Rather than actually listening to the question, listening to the statement, you have victimized yourself so much, or belief in victimization so much, that you believe that even when an anchor is actually physically going out of his way, or their way, to help you by saying, is this a fair statement? Your response is to lose your temper like a child and say to them, you don't understand this, you don't want what I want, and you're supposed to be our next Prime Minister when you don't even listen to questions being asked.
Not tabloid journalism.
Yes,
That's putting your own words back to you.
Tabloid journalism where you're evading. You were evading asking me to give an opportunity to discuss the wider issue of the Middle East.
Because
all you're interested
in... Actually, what I was going to ask you next was something rather more
said.
important. No,
it's tabloid journalism and you know it.
Wow.
Well, it's absolutely not. I was asking you about your own words, and if you're not prepared to defend your own words, then that's fine.
I'm quite prepared to defend my own words. I've just done so.
I want to get on to a bigger aspect of foreign policy, which we could have done minutes ago had you just answered the question when I answered it, which is it noble, is it right to continue doing nothing to intervene in Syria?
I think the decision not to bomb Syria...
We now return to your regular programming.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Jeremy Corbyn melting down by being asked a question of what's happened in his own past, which was that he was calling them friends and himself with friends with them. And yet, because he was called out on this, he completely loses his stuff like a child. And apparently this is the cool, calm, collected grandpa of politics, the one that will look after you no matter what, except if you disagree with them or their views. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm quite happy to expose Jeremy Corbyn for what I believe him to be, a hate-filled man, especially when it comes to the point of the super rich, because, let's be honest, nobody with a lot of money can ever be happy, because the super rich are not really happy. They can't really be happy, can they? After all, that's just tabloid news. Your tabloid news. Now let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this video and to this channel. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. I will speak to you all again very soon. But bye for now. Take care.